Hello there, you beautiful people. My name is Willow, and welcome to my first ever Cyberpunk 2077 challenge run. In my last run, I tried to beat Fallout New Vegas using only shotguns, which was quite fun, so today I decided to take on something a bit tricky as we find out if I can beat Cyberpunk's very hard difficulty while only using Quickhacks. Before we get into the run, let's lay down some ground rules. I can only use Quickhacks to deal damage, with the exception of the very many times where Cyberpunk decides to take away player agency and forces me to use various weapons. I must play the entire game on the very hard difficulty. I can't use any bugs or glitches on purpose to exploit the game, and I will not be using any mods throughout this run. With the rules of the run laid out, let's take a look at the challenge itself. So I want to start by addressing a couple of things. First off, this is actually my second Cyberpunk run, as I ended up losing my first set of recordings for the entirety of the first run due to a drive failure. So sadly, this won't be a blind playthrough like I was originally intending for my first Cyberpunk run. And the second thing I want to address that's kind of big is that Cyberpunk forces the player to use certain weapons during some of the scripted events, and this will not fail the run, as I don't see the game taking away my choices as a valid reason to fail a run. With those out of the way, let's take a look at the quick hacks available to me in this run. There are 6 categories of quick hacks in the game, which are the combat, control, covert, ultimate, device, and vehicle quick hacks respectively. There's too many for me to go over in detail without making this video, well, more ungodly long than it already is, which honestly, I have to say, I respect you all. You all clicked on this video expecting a full-length movie when you saw that little number in the bottom left, and holy crap, that is a lot of dedication. Anyways, the quick hacks that I think are going to be most useful to me are the overheat, contagion, cyberware malfunction, and all of the ultimate quick hacks. In my mind, I think these are going to be my best shot at dealing damage consistently, so I'm gonna go ahead and focus on upgrading those first, and then experiment around with other options as I go through the run. A lot of this run is going to be based around hiding behind cover and popping out to use hacks on enemies, as well as abusing the camera system and defense systems throughout the game to clear rooms before I enter. With that, I think I've covered everything we need to hop right into the run, where I select the very hard difficulty and the Corpo start, as I know for a fact that the Corpo start does not require me to do any combat. I then go ahead and craft Night City's Apex Netrunner and set up my attributes, which are a 4 in body for survivability, 6 in intelligence as it's the primary attribute for hacking, 3 in reflexes as it's kind of useless to me, 6 in technical ability as it can be useful later on in the run, and a 3 in cool because I'm incredibly lame. With that, the game starts with me hurling in the office bathroom sink before a man named Jackie Wells calls me, and it seems that we're friends. You know what friends do though? They go down below this video and hit the like and subscribe buttons if they haven't already. Anyways, he asks how I'm doing, and I tell him that apparently there was some form of info leak at Arasaka Counter Intel, which is where I work apparently. I then leave the bathroom to head towards my boss's office when he calls me. His name is Jenkins, and he says I'm late and complains about a woman named Abernathy. On my way to his office, I stop to speak with a man named Frank, and we talk about our bosses. It turns out his boss, Abernathy, the woman Jenkins was complaining about, apparently ruined Jenkins' promotion opportunity because of some kind of strife. It's just a bunch of office drama. I'm just chalking it up to that. Anyways, while that was incredibly interesting to learn about, I decide to head off to my office and explore around a little bit, where I read some emails and use this weird inhaler thing before making my way to Jenkins' office. I then silently take my seat in front of his desk as he's watching a gathering of the European Space Council on a huge TV. He's on a phone call, and apparently he tells the guy on the other end to assassinate all of the council, and with that, there seems to be some kind of hack on their cybernetics, causing them all to scream out and die in pain. After that, Abernathy calls Jenkins, complaining to him about murdering the council, and he pulls me aside and, after a long conversation, orders me to assassinate Abernathy, giving me a data shard with all of the information about her and a wad of cash to get the job done. I then leave his office and call Jackie to ask him to meet up with me before making my way to Jenkins' AV, which stands for automated vehicle? Or maybe armored vehicle? Honestly, I don't know which it is. Maybe it's aerial vehicle? All I know is that V stands for vehicle, and oh my god, the character is named V, which means I'm a vehicle. God, my jokes are getting dumber by the video. Anyways, I enter the AV and find that drinks are included on my flight, so I make sure to enjoy an amazing glass of AG1, which is a delicious blend of vitamins, probiotics, and superfoods that support my health, digestion, and immune system with just 1 scoop per day. I've never really been all that health conscious until recently, and I've never tried any of these supplements, but I wanted to see if they work, so I went to try it out for the first time, and it was interesting. For starters, I tried recording while I mixed it for the first time with my other free hand, but that just turned into a mess on the table. This isn't anything about the product, I just find it kind of funny that I made a mess. Anyways, after shaking the bottle and mixing the packet with the water, I was surprised by the green color, which made me think it was going to have a weird taste, but after trying it, I have to say I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's hard to describe, but it has a kind of pineapple taste, and after trying it for 4 days, I have noticed that I feel more energetic and it's become a part of my daily routine. I've been having a glass every day after lunch, and it's helping me get the nutrients my diet has very obviously been lacking, and I really appreciate the extra energy that I've had since I started using it. Personally, I prefer the travel packs as they are convenient and I don't have to worry about storing them in the fridge, and if you want to try them out yourself, make sure to scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to get $20 off your first month subscription and start supporting your health with just 1 scoop of AG1 every day. Getting back to the run, I tell the AV to land on top of the roof of Lizzie's bar, where I turn a basketball into a lethal weapon before casually sinking a half-court shot on my way inside the bar, where I drink a bit with Jackie, who turns out to be a jacked cool guy. After a while of talking about the hit job on Abernathy, a few guys enter the bar, and oh my god, look at this guy, he's adorable! Anyways, they're from Arasaka and they fire me, meaning I just lost all my money, my house, and access to my company implants. I then fall over and a montage starts where me and Jackie go on a rampage across town over the course of the next few days, maybe longer, it might have been a week or a month. Once this montage ends, I find myself in a new car with Jackie and we're on a job to save some woman who was taken by thugs. This involves making our way through a dungeon filled with enemies, and unfortunately I don't have access to any quick hacks as of yet, so I decide to just stealth through the entire section, slowly working my way through using non-lethal takedowns, as I feel that's the hardest way to do this. After making each and every thug take a nice little nap, I end up finding the missing woman, Sandra Dorset, and pull her out of an ice bath. It seems that these guys were chopping up people they kidnapped to steal and sell their implants, and I need to jab a needle in her chest to revive her before taking her out onto a balcony where an AV shows up with some armed men from Trauma Team to take her away to a hospital, presumably. With the job done, me and Jackie head over to this elevator and he asks to use my car for a date with a woman named Misty. This is so upsetting that I totally on purpose and not at all a misclick on accident throw a grenade into the elevator, killing us both. Yep, that's the first death of the run, and honestly, I'm kind of glad it was. Anyways, I then let Jackie start driving me home, only to be attacked by some scavs in a van. Luckily, I don't have to shoot at them at all because they suck at driving and end up crashing out all on their own before Jackie manages to smooth talk his way through a police lockdown. He then proceeds to drive me back to my house, and along the way we watch Max Tack take down a group of thugs, which was kind of impressive. I really like the choreography. I mean, honestly, it's all scripted, so they could have done anything here, so I'm glad it looks cool. He then drops me off at my apartment where I spend a while checking it out before heading to bed. I then wake up to a call that reveals that I slept for a really long time, and my character mentions feeling like she got some sickness when saving Sandra Dorset. The conversation goes on for a little while, and Jackie tells me to meet him outside my apartment building for some big news. He also mentions us heading to a Ripper Dock after he tells me, so I head down and sit with him at a noodle stand, and it turns out that the big news is that him and T-Bug, our netrunner, got us a possible job lined up with a fixer named Dexter Deshawn, who just so happens to be the biggest fixer in Night City. Apparently, the deal rides on me, and Dexter wants to meet me in person, so with that, Jackie shows me that he fixed my car, and we drive over to the Ripper Doc Victor, who gives me a free cybernetic eye and hand while getting getting rid of that virus I got from the last job. With that, I head off and meet with Dexter, who tells me the job is some kind of heist against Arasaka and that he wants to test my crew before we take on the job. He gives me 2 tasks, one of which is to go get a robot from the Maelstrom Boys, and the other is to meet a woman named Evelyn Parker who is funding the entire operation. I tell him I'll deal with the client meeting first before getting out of his fancy car and running over to a nearby Netrunner shop to get myself set up with a few quick hacks. The first hack I get is called Ping, and I get it for free because T-Bug hooked me up, and all it really does is highlight everything on a certain network. It's really not all that useful. I don't plan to use it very much in this run whatsoever, but hey, a free hack is a free hack. I then buy the crafting specs for a few hacks, but sadly I can't use them as they require a higher cyber deck level. Anyways, I go ahead and set up my cyber deck with a few hacks and learn how to hack this access point before leaving the shop and finding myself in a fight between some thugs and the cops. I try out my new quick hacks and realize this run may be a bit rough, and my biggest takeaway is that managing RAM is going to be of utmost importance. I can only use a couple of quick hacks before I'm out of RAM, but luckily my hacks do a decent amount of damage, so that's an upside. After killing all of the thugs, I proceed to start making my way over to Lizzie's bar, where I'll meet with Evelyn, but along the way there, I get attacked by more thugs, this time in a van, that I quickly take care of before looting them and selling all of their items and heading over to a Ripper dock to get some upgrades to my cyberware. With that, I finally find myself outside of Lizzie's bar, where I head inside and ask the bartender if Evelyn is here. He tries to give me the runaround, but Evelyn was sitting right next to me and she reveals herself by buying me a drink. I then follow her to a private lounge where she talks to me about Dexter and my crew and tries to get a feel for who I am before explaining exactly what the job she's hiring us for is, and it involves stealing a prototype biochip from Yorinobu Arasaka, the heir to the Arasaka Empire. Now I know that right now this means nothing to you all, but I will quickly explain that Arasaka is a mega corporation which is basically more powerful than the government, and our goal is to steal from the second most powerful man in the entirety of the mega corporation. In other words, this is going to be a huge heist with a lot of risk, as Arasaka kind of could wipe us off the planet if they wanted to. But I always say go big or go home, and also I'm gonna stick it to my former employer who just fired me, so now I'm excited to take on the job, and of course, Evelyn has a little bit more to show me. One, the prototype we're going to steal was also stolen, but by Yorinobu from his father. So that's a little bit weird, but also, Evelyn has a Braindance recording of Yorinobu's apartment, and apparently the Braindance will allow me to look around his apartment and scan things and figure out exactly what we need to do to get into his apartment and steal the chip ourselves. With that, we meet up with Judy in the basement, and she's apparently some techno-whiz who edits Braindances, and she's going to walk me through how to enter a Braindance and how to enter the editor mode so I can look around and scan inside of this recording. Judy gets me set up with the gear and runs me through a test Braindance to get me calibrated to all of this editing mode stuff, and it's a really cool section where you get to go through someone's memories and notice things that they may have missed. In the test, I find out that this guy who robbed a convenience store got shot by his friend, which was kind of wild. I then patch in my Netrunner T-Bug so that she can help me figure out exactly what I'm looking at as I enter Evelyn's Braindance. It turns out that Evelyn is Yorinobu's escort, which was quite a turn, but a little bit irrelevant as I go through and scan all of the security in Yorinobu's apartment, as well as figure out exactly where the biochip is being held before exiting the Braindance and speaking with both Judy and Evelyn. On my way out, Evelyn wants to speak with me alone, and I do so only for her to say that I should cut Dexter out of the deal, which seems like a bad idea, but also, I don't know, I didn't get good vibes from Dexter, so maybe we'll figure out how this goes. I tell her I'll think about it and then leave the bar, leveling up and taking a few points into the intelligence perks before heading over to get the flathead robot from the Maelstrom Boys. On my way over to the All Foods factory, which is kind of the headquarters of the Maelstrom Boys, I remember that Dexter mentioned there's a Militech agent named Meredith who is looking for the missing shipment that Maelstrom stole. I call her and ask to meet about her missing goods, and she agrees before I make my way over to this storm Canal, where I go to shake her hand only to be assaulted by her bodyguard. After a long conversation, it's agreed that I'm going to pay for the flathead using a credit chip that she provided that has a Militech virus on it. With that, I head over to the All Foods factory and meet up with Jackie before heading over and entering the factory itself. After a lot of walking, we get into an elevator and are greeted by a wonderfully horrid man named Dum Dum who shows us the flathead and how it works before demanding payment for the bot. So a little bit of context, Dexter already paid a man named Brick from the Maelstrom Boys for the flathead, but apparently since he paid, a new leader of the Maelstrom Boys named Royce ousted Brick and now demands that I pay again. So naturally, I just pay them with the Militech chip and the virus takes out their Netrunner and causes complete chaos. I then have to start fighting my way through all of the Maelstrom goons, and it's a rough and slow battle. The flow of combat is very tedious as I use all of my quick hacks that deal damage like overheat and short circuit before taking cover to avoid damage. This is a taste of how combat is going to be throughout the majority of this run, and earlier when I mentioned that managing RAM is going to be my top priority, I kind of neglected telling you all how RAM works. In the top left, underneath my health bar, you'll notice a row of tick marks that are either blue or red. Each tick mark represents 1 point of RAM, and you'll notice whenever I scan an enemy that I have a few options and they each have a certain RAM cost. The blue bars of RAM represent how much I currently have available, and the red is my depleted RAM. After using a quick hack, I automatically start regenerating RAM, and right now that happens incredibly slowly, but later on in the run I will get access to ways to speed up my RAM recovery, but overall the issue is I will never have enough, so I'm always going to be in these situations where I need to basically throw a bunch of damage out, cast a bunch of effectively spells if this was a fantasy game, and then hide for a little bit while my mana, or in this case RAM, regenerates. Also, during this dungeon, I ran into something that I didn't even think about, but it's very obvious it could be an issue. As I pointed out earlier, quick hacks have a certain cost associated with them. What I didn't know is that this cost changes depending on who you are targeting. Stronger enemies, or enemies with a higher intelligence level, are a lot harder to hack, so I end up dying to this enemy Netrunner, who I just simply don't have enough RAM available to use any of my combat quick hacks on, so I end up having to use a bit of a clever strategy to be able to take him down. I noticed that if I isolate him, I can tank his damage pretty easily, and I can also kind of herd him around the room. So what I had to do was get really close to him and force him to run away towards various environmental objects like gas tanks that I can then hack and detonate, causing him to take damage. Honestly, this was a really fun moment, having to figure out an alternate solution that was just improvised on the go. Moving on, I continue through the factory dealing with a bunch more regular thugs, as well as another Netrunner that had the exact same issue, but now that I have some tools, I was able to deal with him a lot more easily, before making my way to the exit of the dungeon where I encounter the final boss, Royce himself. He is piloting a giant mech and has an absolutely insane health pool, and this fight took me a very long time. Each of my quick hacks only does about 3% of his health and damage, but after running around this small arena for a little under 20 minutes, I managed to fell the big guy by lowering his health to 1% before Jackie ends him with his pistols. Oh, also, despite this, Jackie was pretty much useless. He is incredibly inaccurate unless he is point blank with an enemy, and he does very little damage per shot, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be the case for pretty much every ally in any combat section, so unlike Bethesda games, I can't really rely on anyone else to help me get through a section. Anyways, I head outside to find Militech has just arrived in force to claim their missing goods, and I speak with the Militech woman Meredith, who is quite happy I helped out and allows me to take the flathead for myself, before speaking with Jackie and calling Dexter, where it's decided that the crew is going to meet up at a bar called the Afterlife. I then run over to a Ripper Dock hoping to upgrade my cybernetics, but I just don't have a high enough level to get the rarer cybernetics yet. I then start heading towards the Netrunner shop only for a bunch of Maelstrom Boys to attack me. This was just pure chaos. I end up trying to run away from them, but then I run into a crime scene which causes the cops to attack me, and it's just like everybody wants me dead. I wanted to fight through them to get some experience, but there's just too many and I don't deal nearly enough damage currently to deal with them, so instead I managed to meander my way over to Victor's clinic, where I pay him back for the free cyberware and check his inventory just in case he has some better cybernetics for me, but he doesn't, and with with that, I make my way to the afterlife and meet up with Jackie, who was on a phone call with his mother and is having to kind of lie to her, saying that he's fine, everything he's doing is safe, when we know that's not entirely true. Anyways, we talk to the bouncer, who lets us in, before we head over to the bar and speak with the bartender Claire, who serves us both a couple of drinks named after the famous mercenary Johnny Silverhand. I ask her what has to be done in order to get a drink named after you here at the afterlife, and the answer is quite morbid. You have to die on a job, and apparently the bigger the death the better, so going out in a more extreme way gets you more likely to have a drink named after you. That's a little morbid, but moving on, we get taken to speak with T-Bug and Dexter about the heist for a while, going over the plan, before me and Jackie get suited up and into this Delamain automated cab, which takes us to Konpeki Plaza, where we store our weapons in the cab and enter the hotel. Jackie is carrying the flathead, and as we get scanned by security, they ask us why we're bringing a military-grade robot into the premises, and I have to explain that we're weapons dealers and it's for demonstration purposes. We then head over and speak with the receptionist to get checked into our room, and she almost ruins our plan by trying to alert an Arasaka executive to our arrival. I have to be a little bit rude to keep her from blowing our cover, but after that I head over to the bar and get into a long conversation with both the bartender and this patron, and after that I end up heading up to mine and Jackie's suite, where we use the flathead in this really cool section where I have to guide the robot through various rooms, creating distractions and hacking doors until eventually we reach the Netrunner's room. I then have the flathead incapacitate him before resting up in the room while waiting for T-Bug to shut down the security in Yorinobu's suite. After that, we head up to the penthouse and I grab this gun that I scanned earlier alongside an iguana egg before heading over to where the biochip is stored. We do some hacking and find this case containing the biochip before finding out that Yorinobu is coming back to his penthouse. There's also a bunch of aircraft circling the penthouse, which is also just not good. This pretty much screws our entire plans for leaving, so we have to find a place to hide. We sneak inside a server rack that has this transparent glass, which is really convenient as we find out that Saburo Arasaka, Yorinobu's father and head of the Arasaka Corporation, comes down the stairs and starts scolding Yorinobu about stealing the chip. We end up getting scanned, but for some reason, neither of their bodyguards says anything before they both leave. I then watch the two men fight over the biochip before Yorinobu kills his father by choking him out in front of us. With that, the building goes on lockbug. Lockbug. I was trying to say, with that, the building goes on lockdown and T-Bug manages to open the door to the balcony before getting killed by the Arasaka Netrunners that I assume just showed up. Anyways, I loot the dead Saburo and run out onto the balcony where we get attacked by an Arasaka drone and fall down the side of the building. We both survive the fall, but Jackie is bleeding pretty badly and the case holding the biochip got damaged. We have to put the biochip into one of our neural ports to keep it from degrading, so Jackie does that, and we continue making our way through the building, killing off a bunch of Arasaka soldiers along the way. At first, I used stealth takedowns, and I'm honestly not sure if I should have. Like, technically I used Quickhacks to disable security systems that would have gotten me detected, but as I'm writing this, I realized that I'm not hacking the enemies here, so you know what? I'm gonna go back and redo this section right now by loading a save and only use Quickhacks since that feels wrong to me that I didn't in the first place. Anyways, I start cutting down all of the enemies in my way using my hacks, and luckily, they aren't all that aggressive and tend to keep their distance, allowing me to easily spam hacks onto them and then wait for my RAM to recharge. After a while, Jackie and I make it to the elevator and write it down while having a conversation, and I kind of feel bad because I, went really hard on him, but I didn't think that option would cause that. Anyways, we're confronted with more soldiers in the lobby of the building, and the fight here is intense. At first, the fight is very intense, and I'm quite worried that I won't be able to get through it, as the enemies are incredibly durable and deal a lot of damage to me, but yet again, they suffer from the issue of the enemies up top, where they they just don't push me. They aren't nearly aggressive enough to push me out of cover and kill me, especially this giant mech that shows up. It takes a nice long while for me to work my way through the lobby, but through patience and taking cover, I manage to chip away at their numbers until none are left standing. Jackie and I enter the garage, and I dive into the Delamain, and I run into the first of many sections where the game forces you to use a weapon. In this case, I have to use this pistol to kill the drones, and at first I did try using my Quickhacks, but I couldn't kill them in time, as the game just straight up kills you if you take too long on this section. So I kill the drones and have this really sad moment as I talk with Jackie and he dies in the backseat of the Delamain. Damn. Game got me tearing up. I really liked him. Why games gotta be like this, taking away the things we like right when we realize we like them? Anyways. Just right back to it. Anyways, we arrive at this hotel to meet with Dexter, and I tell Delamain to take Jackie back to his family before selling all of the loot I just got from the heist. I then head inside and meet with Dex, who argues with me for a bit before telling me to go get cleaned up. I break the bathroom mirror and wash my face before Dexter's bodyguard blindsides me and Dexter proceeds to execute me. Well, I guess that's it. Run over, we answer the question, can I beat Cyberpunk? Oh, wait, what's this? I find myself in a trippy sequence that zooms in on this door before I take control of some dude with a robotic hand and a pistol. I push this guy up against a conveniently placed mirror to find out I'm inhabiting the body of Keanu Reeves before heading out on stage and performing a rock concert as the screen flashes to black. I then find myself backstage after the concert and I tell the groupies that they're wasting their lives before speaking with one of my bandmates named Carrie. I tell him to go off and do his own thing before getting into a helicopter with a woman named Rogue. The helicopter flies us over to the roof of Arasaka Tower, and this guy on a gun turret gets blown away before I take over the turret and blow away all of the Arasaka soldiers on the roof. I then get out of the helicopter with Rogue and a woman named Spider Murphy, and Rogue seems to be the leader here while Spider is a netrunner who quotes poetry? Or makes it up? I'm honestly not sure, but I kinda dig it. Anyways, I then proceed to drop a nuke down an elevator before fighting through more Arasaka soldiers, which is really fun as headshots are instant kills and I feel really powerful as I make my way to this server rack and upload my manifesto or something. Honestly, I'm not sure exactly what I'm doing, but on my way out of the building I get attacked by a man named Adam Smasher before the screen cuts to black and I find myself on the roof of the tower again. I try to jump to the helicopter and Rogue catches me, but before we can get out of here, Adam shoots it out of the sky before blowing my arm off. I then get carted away from the tower and find myself being interrogated by Arasaka henchmen as there's a mushroom cloud in the distance. This really epic scene ends with me speaking to Saburo as his assistant puts a device on my head and I think I die? Anyways, I then end up in a trippy version of Arasaka Tower where I chase around this red ghost until I finally catch him and he asks who I am. I then wake up in a landfill and start crawling my way out only to see Dexter Deshawn walk up. He then drags me a bit and starts talking to Saburo's bodyguard from earlier, but this doesn't last long as Dexter gets his eggs scrambled while Saburo's bodyguard hits me and tells me to shut up. I then pass out once again and wake up a little bit later in his car where he says I smell bad. I pass out again and this time wake up once more in his car, only this time we are under attack by cyborg biker ninjas. That's quite the combination, but the bodyguard, whose name is Takamura, gives me some drugs and a gun to let me help fight the ninjas. This is another section where I'm forced to shoot a gun, so I help him kill off the bikers until slowly but surely there's only one left. He then rams his car into this massive pole, crushing the last cyborg ninja. I then shoot the struggling cyborg and call Delamain to pick us up. I pass out again and wake up a few more times to find out that Takamura performed first aid on me and got me to Victor, who apparently saved my life. I wake up for the final time on his operating table and he seems really shook up. We then have a really long conversation where he explains that section where I was playing as Keanu Reeves wasn't a dream, but a memory, and that the biochip revived me after Dexter shot me in the head, and it had an engram of a terrorist who's been dead for 50 years named Johnny Silverhand. Apparently, Johnny's engram is rewriting my brain and will eventually erase me from existence and let him take over my body. He makes it seem like I'm dying, but I'm not sure if he means I will die at the end of this or just be replaced by Johnny. I guess there isn't much of a difference. Either way, I get taken home by Misty, who then gives me 2 sets of pills. One that will slow down the chip and another that will speed it up. She then also gives me a necklace made out of the bullet Dex shot me with before leaving my apartment. I then quickly fall asleep for a while, only to be awoken by Johnny freaking out in my room for whatever reason. We argue for a while and even fight, which is weird because it's like, stop hitting yourself. I mean, that's all I was thinking while watching this, but yeah, he tries to kill me, but you know, eventually I manage to take my pills that make him less crazy, and then I take a shower. I get up and start getting ready to leave the apartment when I get called by Takamura. Apparently he wants to meet at a nearby diner. I then head to the garage and get in my car only for this to happen. Not gonna lie, that was hilarious, but now I don't have a car, so instead I decide to walk over to Victor's and get some upgrades to my cyberware before stumbling across this metro station where I can just ride the metro? That's actually kind of awesome. I doubt I'll ever do that again, but I ride the train and decide to start doing some side quests named gigs to get some levels and, more importantly, quick hack components. These components will allow me to craft better quick hacks, and the easiest way to obtain more is to hack access points. Gigs generally have a few access points available, so I head off and get into a random fight with these Maelstrom boys yet again. This time I take them all down and grab their loot before starting my first gig, which involves stealing a van from this building. I slowly but surely hack my way through all of the guards at the facility, trying to remain hidden as much as I can. It takes some time, but the real reward of all of this was finding multiple access points where I play this minigame where I have to use these rows and columns of numbers to make certain combinations to get different tiers of hacking, I guess? Anyways, after playing this minigame a few times, I've managed to get quite a few components alongside crafting recipes for hacks that I haven't learned about yet, and something I didn't know you could do is just straight up get full-on hacks. Like, I don't have to craft them, it's not a recipe, they just gave me the quick hack from hacking this access point, which is pretty awesome. It also gives me a little bit of money, which I can spend on cyberware later. Anyways, after clearing all the enemies and hacking all the access points, I steal this van and drive it to a garage down the road before heading on to another gig. This time I need to save a doctor from the Maelstrom boys, and man, do they show up everywhere as of late. Anyways, this is much like the last gig with one exception. I now have access to the Contagion quick hack. It's a lot like Overheat, which is a hack you've seen me using throughout this run, in the fact that it's a damage over time hack, but it sacrifices a little bit of raw damage for the ability to spread between enemies, and it allows me to take on groups much more efficiently. I clear the building with my new arsenal in kind of record time. It wasn't even all that difficult to take down all of the Maelstrom boys before hacking a ton of access points here, giving me a bunch of resources to improve my arsenal even further. I then head in to where the doctor is being held hostage and help her save one of the Maelstroms before escorting her to a getaway car. As I'm leaving the area, I get a message from Jackie's mom and decide to call her. It turns out that she's holding an ofrenda for Jackie, and I tell her I'll be there. She runs a bar and I start making my way there, only to fall off a bridge into a crime scene, causing the cops to start shooting at me, and when I try and run away from all the chaos, I get hit by multiple cars, which is just icing on the cake, but eventually I do manage to run away without dying and happen across another access point, which is nice. I then make my way to the bar and meet up with Mama Wells, and we share a beer, and I tell her I want to do justice to Jackie's ceremony, but I don't have anything to place on his altar. She gives me the key to his garage where he was living, and I make my way over to find Misty sitting outside. I sit and chat with her for a while before convincing her to come inside the garage with me to help me look for something for the ofrenda. I then spend a while scanning everything in the garage and talking with Misty about the various items, as well as hacking his computer because I need the crafting mats. One of the objects I scan is a really good book by Ernest Hemingway. It's For Who the Bell Tolls, and apparently Jackie read it before every big job. I also found out he had a fish, which was pretty cool, before deciding to take the book and head to the bar. Misty says she isn't coming to the ceremony because Mama Wells hates her, but I convince her to come because after all, they were in love. I then return to the bar and the ceremony begins. This has me tearing up. especially listening to Victor's part, before standing and saying some words myself about Jackie. I quote the book and place it on the altar before speaking with Mama Wells. She is a bit bothered that Misty is here, but I tell her to invite Misty to dinner and be nice to her because she was important to Jackie, and it's what he would have wanted. She says I'm a good person and gives me Jackie's bike, which is awesome. I came in here without a vehicle and I'm leaving with a cool bike. Anyways, I go around talking to various people, from the Valentinos to Victor, and even the local fixer Padre, and even the bartender, before leaving the bar and making my way over to the afterlife. I make sure Claire adds Jackie's drink to the menu before ordering one for myself, and with that, I decide it's finally time to go meet with Takamura, so I head over to the diner where he wants to meet, and we talk for a while about the biochip, and he reveals that he needs me to expose the fact that Yorinobu killed his father. He wants me to find Evelyn Parker and Anders Hellman, the man who created the biochip. Oh, also, I have this funny moment with a visual glitch that I'm just gonna show you right here. I then head off to Lizzie's bar to start tracking down Evelyn by speaking with Judy first. When I pull up to the bar, Johnny shows up and starts talking, pointing out some strange glitching graffiti on the wall. I scan it and he says we should speak with Victor or Misty about it, and I also get a quest pop-up that needs me to scan all 20 pieces of graffiti around the city. That's interesting, but I'll check it out later. For now, I head inside Lizzie's bar and make my way down to Judy's office. At first, she seems standoffish, unwilling to talk to me, but after I explain that I just need to know who hired Evelyn and that I don't want to hurt her, she lets me know that Evelyn returned to working at a dollhouse named Clouds. I'm not really sure exactly what a dollhouse is, but if what Johnny is saying is true, it's like a kind of brothel. Anyways, I go ahead and make my way over to Clouds, and the only way I can get in to investigate further is to let them scan me and then pay for a session with a doll. After getting scanned, she gives me a choice of 2 different dolls, and I pick Angel before heading into the club. They make me store my guns, but that won't help them whatsoever, so I do so and make my way to the booth and meet with Angel, all while Johnny is moaning on and on about how he hates this place. Anyways, I have a long and interesting conversation with Angel before using the safe word to end the session so I can interrogate him about Evelyn. He tells me about some incident where she hurt a customer, so I head over to her booth and investigate. I end up watching this crime scene recreation device of the events to find out that she was hacked and it caused her to thrash about wildly. I then need to go meet up with another doll named Tom, who was a friend of hers. To do that, I need to sneak into the VIP area of Clouds, which I do so pretty easily before heading up and speaking with Tom, who tells me that I should speak with the manager of Clouds, a Mr. Woodman. I then sneak my way into Woodman's office and use my intelligence stat to pass a speech check to get him to tell me what happened to Evelyn. Once he explains that he sold Evelyn to a ripper dog named Fingers, who is apparently a real creep, I tell him how to prevent hacks like this happening again in the future, before leaving Clouds to speak with Johnny by the elevator. He complains more and more about how dolls are immoral or something, I don't really know, but I start riding the elevator down and my vision goes all wobbly, and once I reach the ground floor, I collapse. Apparently, the biochip is messing me up and Johnny... Wait, did Johnny just move that stool? How the hell? He's just in my head. He's in my mind. How is he moving stuff? Absolutely unplayable. This is unacceptable. My immersion has been broken. Anyways, he tells me we need to make our way to a place called Makoshi to find someone named Alt Cunningham. I tell him we will, and then call Judy, and she says she'll meet up with me at Fingers Clinic, which just so happens to be on Jig Jig Street. This ended up being really convenient, as I have a quest to turn in on Jig Jig Street where I need to speak with Wakako, a fixer who got me my first job after getting fired from Arasaka, the one where we saved Sandra Dorset oh so long ago. She still owes me for that job, so I stop in and get my payment for the job before heading over to meet with Judy at the clinic. I do have to intimidate some thugs at the entrance, but it wasn't that difficult, so I head inside, and it seems that Fingers has quite the queue of people just so eager to meet with him. I give a bunch of eddies to a couple couple of them to let me take their place in line and then get to meet with the creep himself. He goes on and on about how everyone he operates on just loves him and how he's just a bag of rainbows and kittens because he doesn't force them to pay, because everybody has some way to pay, you know, with their body, because he is a freak. Anyways, he's just giving off real model citizen vibes, so I beat the information out of him, and it turns out he sold Evelyn to the Death's Head. This is a group that makes extreme brain dances involving mostly the person recording the brain dance dying. In other words, make a bunch of snuff films. Anyways, this is concerning, and in order to get more info, we need to find one of their brain dances. I speak with Wakako again, trying to get a lead to find one of these brain dances, and she points me towards a local shop owner who points me to another man, this time in an alley, selling exactly what I'm looking for. I convince him I'm not a cop, and then buy one of the brain dances I'm looking for before heading over and getting into Judy's van, where we investigate the brain dance to find out that they're stationed out of a nearby power plant that's been abandoned. Judy and I head over to the power plant, and I start hacking my way through every last enemy inside and out. After doing those extra couple of gigs and getting a few more hacks in my arsenal, the game has really felt like it's opened up. I no longer feel quite as much that my entire job is to hide and throw hacks at enemies and wait for RAM to recharge, as I now have various tools to deal with groups or single entities that are in my way. This is also the first time I get to use a camera system to clear rooms that I'm not even in, and overall it's actually incredibly fun. I'm able to keep my distance and take down every enemy without being detected until I reach the basement. Here things get a little bit more messy. I manage to down the enemies one by one. Contagion and Overheat are the workhorses of my hack arsenal as of the moment, with Contagion weakening all of the enemies in an area before I use Overheat to finish them off one by one. Past that, I also get to use some environmental objects to deal large burst damage to these thugs, and that speeds things up quite a bit. After dealing with all of the thugs, me and Judy work to save Evelyn from the dungeon, and the screen flashes to black, skipping forward in time to me standing on Judy's balcony with Johnny, who wants me to smoke. I give in and light one up while Judy and Evelyn are taking some alone time. This upsets Johnny, and he moans on and on about how I should just go ahead and head inside and stop wasting time, and I just let him do that until he tuckers himself out before heading inside, where Evelyn is apparently comatose. She doesn't respond to anything or anyone, so I sit down next to her and try to talk to her, but it's no use. I then speak with Judy, who reveals that she managed to get some of the BD recordings from Evelyn's cyberware. We load up the BDs and find out she was hired by the Voodoo Boys, an isolationist group of hackers stationed in Pacifica. Oh, also, they are apparently like really tied to Haitian immigrants, or they are Haitian immigrants. They speak Haitian. Either way, that's pretty cool for a bunch of people that I'll probably have to eliminate later because, oh my lord, it just feels like everybody I encounter ends up dead or my best friend in this game. I'm just now realizing I'm gonna need a lot of RAM for what I'm planning to do. Anyways, long story short, they hired Evelyn to record a brain dance of Yorinobu's suite because they wanted to steal the biochip. So with that, I need to learn what they know about the biochip. I leave Judy's apartment and make my way over to a nearby Netrunner shop to buy some more hacks before getting a text from Meredith Stout, the Militech woman from earlier. She tells me to meet her at a a no-mel hotel is apparently what I was going to say. Yeah, no, this hotel, we do not accept Mels. If your name is Mel, get the hell out. A no-tell motel. Now it's here where I realized I'm one of the densest idiots on the planet as I go to this meeting thinking about, you know, maybe she has a job or something, but no, it was about, wrestling. Yeah, we're gonna go with wrestling for the rest of this run when referring to this. Anyways, after primetime WWE is done, I go ahead and make my way over to the afterlife so I can meet with Rogue and hopefully find a way to track down Anders Hellman. It turns out that Rogue owns the afterlife and is Night City's top fixer. Anyways, we go ahead and talk for a while, and Johnny tells me what to say to get her to work with me, and then I pay her to find Anders Hellman for me. She tells me to come back in a day and she'll tell me what she figured out, so I go sit at the bar for 24 hours and speak with her again, and she reveals that Anders is going to be leaving Night City very soon on an AV, and that I'm gonna need a Nomad to help me get him, as the only place where I can reasonably ambush this AV turns out to be in the Badlands. Also, as it turns out, there's a Nomad that needs my help named Panam. Apparently, she messed up a smuggling job for Rogue, and she needs to fix it. Rogue tells me where to find Panam's missing delivery, as well as her missing vehicle, before sending me off to find Panam herself. So I head off to find Panam, who is working on an apparently stolen car in the most Megan Fox from Transformers scene ever to introduce a character. Seriously, am I the only one who was watching this and just thought about that scene from the first Transformers movie with Sam Witwicky? The one where he rides the girl's bike and calls the cops saying, "I'm chasing my own car that's been stolen." Why do I remember that movie so damn well? What the hell is wrong with me? After a long conversation with Johnny randomly appearing just to smoke a cigarette on the car, like I thought he was gonna say something, he never did. Either way, I strike a deal with her that if I help her get her vehicle and goods back, she will help me take down Hellman's AV and get to him. So we head out of the city in a car she stole while chatting until eventually reaching her old Nomad camp. She was apparently cast out from this clan of the Nomads called the Aldercaldos, but they are still friendly with her. We arrive and speak with a couple of war-grizzled Nomads named Mitch and Scorpion, who refuse to help us get her gear back, but do give us a bunch of supplies to do just that. Panam and I head over to this ghost town where the people who stole her truck and goods are going to be. We spend some time setting up an ambush where we're going to restore power to this ghost town and supply the convoy with all the lights and machinery, and then we wait for them to show up. They do, and I turn on the power, which makes them start investigating before starting a war of attrition with them using my arsenal of hacks. It wasn't all that difficult to wipe out all of the enemies here, as I have plenty of cover and they don't seem interested in pushing me out of it. When the enemies just sit back and try and play it from range, it makes things much easier, so I abuse their lack of aggression by whittling them down one by one, using overheat and contagion, and then I go ahead and get into Panam's truck called Warhorse, and we start driving. She then tells me she wants to take revenge on the leader of the group that stole from her, and I say, let's do it. With that, we head into this cave network and find their headquarters, where I get stuck into more combat. There's definitely a bit more challenge with this encounter, as the enemies are a lot closer and it's a smaller area overall, but yet again I find myself a good place to hold up and start taking down the waves of thugs as quickly as possible. A lot of enemies here are incredibly durable, so they take multiple rounds of hacks to fell, but I am able to stay relatively safe as I pop out from cover and apply the hacks, then duck back down to avoid being shot while watching the little numbers pop up and go higher and higher. I don't know, it gives me dopamine, just like look at those numbers, they go up. Satisfying. When all is said and done, me and Panam head off to deliver the goods she lost, and the deal goes smoothly before we enter a bar at this motel for a drink. Afterwards, we share a room at this motel in order to save some cash, and I fall asleep. I wake up around midnight to an empty room and decide to go out and find Panam, who happens to be working on her truck, as I ask her about the plan. Apparently, the AV can't just be shot down using normal weaponry, so we're gonna have to get clever, and Panam, being rather clever, came up with a plan for us to use a nearby power facility to cause an EMP that should fry all of the electronics on the AV, forcing it to land. With that, we hop inside Warhorse and head out while talking for a bit. Johnny takes a seat in the back of the truck as we talk and mentions that he likes the fact that we're going to be taking down a Corpo AV by sabotaging a Corpo power plant, and this is starting to sound like an advertisement for the word Corpo. Anyways, she eventually pulls over to get me set up to use the roof-mounted machine gun, or autocannon. Not really sure what it'd be considered, but it makes big booms. And yet again, this is a section where I have to use a weapon that isn't a hack. Anyways, I also have to explain to her that the chip in my head isn't going to be an issue, since her scan picked it up as some form of malware. I then calibrate the gun by shooting a few wrecked cars before we continue to the power plant. She explains that we need to head inside and overload the systems, and with that, we head down towards the plant. I have to shoot down some drones, and I use hacks as much as possible during during this, but I know if I take too long, the game will just kill me after an arbitrary time limit, so I decide to shoot the gun because the game's forcing me. We then crash into the power station and I overload a few systems, but each time I do so, it messes up the biochip, causing a bunch of pain, and it becomes apparent the EMP might kill me and Johnny. With that, we jump into the truck and speed out of there, while Johnny rather uncharacteristically panics, saying we need to run and get away. It was actually kind of cool to see him scared for once. Anyways, we make our way to a nearby ridge and wait for the AV to come by. Panam gives me the detonator, which is fun, and once the AV shows up, I spam the trigger, but the EMP doesn't happen until the last second. Unfortunately, the EMP only fried certain systems and the engines are still running, so we still need to knock it out of the sky, and this is when Panam produces a damned guided rocket launcher out of her ass or something, because like, she don't know where that came from. Anyways, she uses it to knock out the engines on the AV, and I'm just so confused, because earlier they mentioned that this thing is basically impervious to damage. It will not be taken down by rocket launchers, there is no gun big enough. But now it just gets shot down by a normal rocket launcher? Why did we even do the EMP in the first place? Does it have some kind of like energy shielding? I've never heard of any of that in this. Am I the only one confused? Does this feel like a really lazy as far as like execution goes? Why would they even need it like this? Why not just have the EMP take the AV out of the sky? Like, why would it have to partially fail and still get the same result and also negate what you said earlier? I'm ranting, okay? You know what? Screw it. It starts falling out of the sky, and we hear Mitch and Scorpion on the radio talking about going to help the AV. Apparently, the EMP didn't actually take the AV out of the sky, but it sure as hell fried our radio, because we cannot seem to contact Mitch and Scorpion to tell them to stay away, otherwise they'll die. As we chase the AV, some drones start attacking us, so naturally I use the turret again, but it gets jammed, so Panam has to put the truck on autopilot and climb out onto the roof to fix it. While she does, the drones are still firing, and god damn, that looked painful. One of the rounds ricochet all the way through her. Anyways, she gets the turret working again, so I use it to take down the drones before stopping off nearby where the AV crashed. Panam uses an expired air hypo, which is basically a stim pack, to deal with her gunshot wound, and we use a drone to scout the site. We find out Mitch is being held hostage, and with that, I tell Panam to stay by the truck while I go deactivate the cannon they set up. I then run around to the other side of the crash site, as it looks like it has more cover, before sprinting my way up to this terminal that shuts down the cannon. With that, I am now surrounded by drones and robots that want to kill me very badly, so I have to use my healing items and run away while performing hacks on various robots. This is really intense and I nearly die, but I do manage to get back to cover and start the slow process of whittling down the automated security forces one by one. The biggest threat was this massive drone, but it never decided to get aggressive and push me, so I just decided to, hide behind this rock. It's a nice rock. I enjoy this rock. I pop out a few times and use the short circuit quick hack, which does bonus damage to robots, drones, and mechs, and it eventually dies as I loot the area for all of the guns and materials before we head over to the door of the AV. Panam opens it and we find the pilot is holding Mitch as a human shield. I tried hacking the pilot, but he's unhackable, so I just wait a while and eventually Mitch elbows the pilot in the stomach while Panam shoots him in the face. With Mitch saved, the three of us talk for a little while and find out that Scorpion died, and Hellman was taken to a nearby gas station. I tell Panam to stay here with Mitch, but she declines that offer and decides to head out to the gas station with me on some of the Alder Caldo's bikes. On the way there, I tell Panam a story to get her mind off the fact that Scorpion died, and it cheers her up a little bit until we reach the gas station and I hack into the security cameras from a distance and start peacefully relocating all of the enemies to the afterlife. This is honestly more of the same, and I'm kind of worried that this challenge wasn't the best for my first run in a game, since it's not all that fast paced, since most of the time I'm hiding and hacking, but I'm honestly having a lot of fun, and I hope you all are enjoying the video nonetheless. If you are enjoying the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and let me know if you have another run you want to see in Cyberpunk in the future. Back to the run, I do have to say that I'm not sure how well this is going to scale later into the game. Don't get me wrong, I feel really powerful, and it also is nice that I don't really have to to directly engage with enemies to deal my damage, but on the other hand, my damage feels incredibly slow due to the fact that I have to wait to regenerate RAM over and over, and none of my quick hacks are really like one-shotting enemies. It's usually I have to use a few quick hacks in a row to down even the simplest of foes. Either way, I eventually clear out the gas station and head inside to find an injured Hellman, who I proceed to pistol whip before carrying him outside as a bunch of cars start pulling up. I open the garage to find a bunch of the Aldercaldos came to help us. I talk with Panam and Mitch for a bit before Saul, the leader of the Aldercaldos, shows up to scold Pam. I then put Andrews on this motorcycle and the screen cuts to black before skipping forward in time to him in a motel room passed out. I wake him up and start asking him questions about the biochip. It's a long conversation that ends with him scanning me and saying there's nothing he can do while giving me the blueprints for the biochip as Takamura shows up. I go ahead and give those two their privacy heading outside, but when I leave I start having one of my biochip seizures. Johnny is incredibly pissed and I have to sit down and talk with him. He says that he's been trying to figure out how I'm wired, and he says that my issue is that I'm a Corpo rat, a cog in the machine, that when Arasaka fired me, my only choice was to become a gun for hire, that I'm just, I guess, directionless? Anyways, I start asking how he knows so much about my past, and he says he sees my memories as flashes, much like we see his memories and my flashes. So, yeah, this conversation gets a little bit deep where I'm saying I'm scared I'm gonna not be me and all this other stuff, and he's just kind of complaining about me, so I ask him what he wants from me, and he says that I need to help him settle his score with Arasaka. That's all he wants. And I tell him that what he really wants is an enemy. He needs somebody who is oh so powerful. He needs a nemesis that is a suicide mission to go up against. And that's why I think he's so obsessed with defeating Arasaka. And I point out that he's treating me like an enemy because I am kind of that all-powerful thing. In the end, it's going to be my choice. I get to decide his future, and there is fuck all he can do about it. He then finally agrees to tell me why he wants to fight Arasaka so bad. Initially, it's the standard anti-capitalism thing about how the corporations have turned Night City into a machine, fueled by people's crushed dreams, broken spirits, and empty pockets. And I thought it was gonna stop there, but then he actually touched on something that I think is his true reason for hating Arasaka in particular so much, because everything he said so far could be applied to any of the corporations. He says the corporations have long controlled our lives, and now they're after our souls. I hadn't really thought about his motivation before, I just kind of saw him as a anti-corporation anarchist pretty much, but I kind of see his side where it's an incredibly scary thought to think that a corporation, even nowadays, can take everything from you. They can take your house, your money, they can take everything material away from you. And now there is a corporation in this world that can take your soul and put it on a chip and lock you in a digital prison. That is an incredibly scary thought. And I think this conversation just deserved a little bit more of a spotlight in this video, so I decided to share it with you all. He also has some really cool lines, like he declared war because he has to, and that this is a people's war against a system that spiraled out of control. It's a war against the forces of entropy. You know what? I like Johnny more now. That's what all of this is boiling down to. I really like Johnny. And before, me as a player was just kind of like, screw Arasaka, they fired me. Now, I wouldn't have had that if I had a different start, but with this one, I already had that motivation, but also it wasn't a very strong one, and I wasn't super captivated by, well, the story in general after the intro sequence. I really felt the story was lacking after we did the heist, and this has kind of drawn me back into it, so let's continue on. I then head back to Night City and get my cybernetics upgraded at Victor's clinic, and I've not really mentioned it, but this entire time I've been doing these main story quests, I've been looking for access points around the map, and I've managed to get a bunch of tier 3 quick hacks, which should increase my damage quite a bit. I then get a call from Takamura, and he says he wants me to join him in meeting with one of his Arasaka contacts. I head over to the meeting location and wait for Takamura, and he shows up and reveals that we are meeting with a man named Oda, who is the bodyguard of Hanako Arasaka, Yorinobu's sister. After a while, Oda shows up, and Takamura argues with him for a while before I give this man a scathing reminder of his duty and honor to be truthful to his superiors. He then storms off angry as Takamura explains that Oda revealed something useful to us. Apparently sometime soon, Hanako is scheduled to be in a parade and she is going to be giving a speech, which means we know where she will be at a given time, and this gives us a chance to reach her and speak with her directly. So naturally, we head over to my favorite fixer on Jig Jig Street, Wakako, to get information on the parade. She surprisingly has a lot of information and also gives it to us for free after I subtly threaten her when she asks why Dexter didn't get me the information. With the information in hand, Takamura says he needs time to plan, so I leave him to it, only to get a phone call from Panam where she asks for my help. I then ride out to the Aldercaldo's camp and find Panam, and she explains that the Raffins, the same group that stole her truck and cargo, have captured the Aldercaldo's leader, Saul. I tell her I'll help and then head over to speak with some of the other nomads who seem to want to leave Saul out to dry. But Mitch shows up and lets me use a cloaked drone to scout out the Raffin facility where they are holding Saul. After that, I drive myself and Panam in one of the nomads' vans to the Raffin camp as a huge dust storm starts rolling in. The driving goes incredibly smoothly until I have to stop and, well, that's Panam's problem now. I then proceed to hack into the camera system of the camp and wreak absolute havoc on any and every thug using my hacks. I honestly find doing this incredibly fun, just hopping cameras and slinging out damage with no one being the wiser. I wipe out a good 20 or so Raffin soldiers before making my way inside the camp, where I continue to use hacks from stealth against small groups of enemies while making my way into the basement. There are only 3 enemies left in the basement, which pose little to no threat to me as I dispose of them and free Saul before opening this gate using my technical ability stat before leading Saul through this small storm drain, which lets us sneak out to where Panam is waiting in the van to drive us away. We all talk in the van while the storm rolls in, forcing us to stop at a nearby house. We enter the house only to find that the power is out because of the storm, so I have to go fix the breaker box. I do just that, but it starts getting cold and the heater won't turn on. Naturally, I'm the only one who can fix anything around here, so I go outside and fix the generator, and with that, I return inside and spend some time talking with Saul and Panam, mostly about this corporation called Biotechnica that wants Saul and the Aldercaldos to work for them. I say that's a horrible idea before Saul heads off to bed, and I continue drinking some ancient booze while joking around with Panam. She ends up rejecting me whenever I try and suggest we do some professional wrestling, and then she passes out on the couch next to me as Johnny wishes us a good night in a kind of wholesome scene. I then wake up a few hours later and make my way outside, where Panam gives me a sniper rifle for helping her. Not really useful, but you know, I'll take it. I then leave the Aldercaldos behind and call Mr. Hand to figure out if he can get me a meeting with the Voodoo Boys, the people who hired Evelyn. Damn, this video has been going on so long I almost forgot about the whole Evelyn questline. Anyways, he says he'll call me back later, and then Takamura calls me telling me I need to meet with him to talk about the parade. So I do just that, and it turns out he managed to get some malware that should help us out with making sure the float that Hanako's on is in the right place at the right time. He wants to test it out, so he sends me into the nearby security building for all of the security systems in the area, and as I'm entering, I get a call from Mr. Hands, and he tells me the Voodoo Boys will talk to me if I do a job for them. With that, I go ahead and use the malware on the security system, and it lets us take it completely over, which means it works perfectly. With that, I return to Takamura and spend a while at a food stand talking to him while we eat. I eat my entire meal without saying a word to him, just to assert dominance, before he talks on and on about his plan to break into some Arasaka facility and upload the malware into Hanako's float. He says we'll talk again after he's scouted out the warehouse, but at Johnny's request, I decide to tell Takamura I'll join him on the recon mission, which leads to this little section where we break into a construction site near the warehouse and we scope out their security. We also have a couple of fun chats until a cat shows up, which is apparently apparently really rare, as all of the dogs and cats in Night City have died out, which, I don't know, this four-legged thing in front of me makes me think that might be a little bit exaggerated, considering, you know, we see a cat right now. Anyways, he thinks the cat is a spirit animal, and Johnny throws himself off the roof, which is my cue to break into this warehouse. The game wants me to approach this stealthily, but I decide that overwhelming violence is a better choice as I start hacking anything that moves. I end up doing a whole bunch of murder, like maybe an excessive amount of murder, to the point where I even find a new way to do murder. It's so exciting. It's like discovering some new element on the periodic table. Now I know you're wondering, what's this new way to murder? Well, the take control quick hack that I've been using to take control of camera systems also happens to work on turrets, and as it turns out, turrets are goddamn terrifying in this game, because just look at this carnage. Like, holy crap, that is a lot of damage. You're gonna need more than flex tape. Anyways, I make my way inside the warehouse, and things just turn to complete chaos immediately as I seem to be surrounded by a never-ending horde of Arasaka soldiers. I almost end up dying to this guy with a shotgun near Hanako's float, but in the end I do manage to upload the malware and parkour my way up to the roof in order to escape. With that quest done, I go to sell all of the loot I've gathered when I get another phone call from Panam asking me to help once again. I then sell all of the loot from the warehouse and make my way out to the Aldercaldo's camp once more. Seeing as we are an hour into this video, I want to go ahead and say thank you all for watching and announce that I'm going to be doing a bit of a giveaway here. Go into the comments and leave your favorite holiday themed joke, and I will give the person who gets the most likes on their holiday joke a copy of Fallout New Vegas Game of the Year Edition on Steam. Once at the camp, I find myself in the middle of a peachy little argument between Panam Pitch and Paul, apparently. Panam, Mitch, and Saul over Biotechnica. They're a corporation that want to hire the Aldercaldos to work for them, and the argument ends with Saul storming off, and Panam informs me that she wants to go steal a cargo tank from Militech called the Basilisk. So we head over to a nearby train station, and I spend some time talking to all of the nomads here while helping them fix a generator, and I end up learning that there was some kind of war that ended up destroying most technology at some point, so this station was using punch cards instead of some high-tech system to run the trains. I found it really interesting, and it ended up with me needing to find one of these punch cards and use it to get the train up and running. I then speak with Panam and tell her I'm helping because she asked, nothing complicated about it, before heading down to the campfire where we have a toast to Scorpion and drink, and rather sweetly, Panam also toasts to Jackie. I then decide to take a nap and wait for the Militech convoy, and when they wake me up, I have to jump into Panam's truck and ride alongside the train, but it's going too slow, so I have to shoot this coupler to detach the trailer to speed up the train just in time for it to destroy the first car in the convoy. We then get dragged into a slog of a firefight with all of the Militech security, which ended up being pretty tense as I almost die a couple of times due to this new feature I've unlocked called Overclock, which lets me use my health pool as RAM, which is incredibly nice, but also means I'm now walking a knife's edge between dealing damage and not actively killing myself. Anyways, we then steal the two trucks carrying the Basilisk and return to the Aldercaldo's camp, where Panam gets into a screaming match with Saul. The quest is now complete, and I head off to do that job for the Voodoo Boys that Mr. Hands told me about, and this quest starts me off with going to a church where there's a funeral being held. I walk through the crowd and I'm a bit confused until one of the Voodoo Boys taps me on the shoulder and tells me to go find a man named Placide. So I make my way over to this butcher shop and get scanned by the security system before heading into the back and finding Placide butchering a chicken. He then leads me to a nearby marketplace and gives the chicken to a lady before taking me up to his office, I think. Anyways, he tries to plug me into some device and I pull away asking what the hell he's doing. After some explanation and goading from Johnny, I agree to let him do whatever he needs as long as we agree that I'm going to meet with his boss. He then sends me off to a nearby unfinished mall where I'm supposed to find a van filled with networking equipment. So I head over to the mall and start handing out quick hacks like it's candy on Halloween, and it's a messy and chaotic section of me swapping between using the camera system to deal with enemies and getting stuck into firefights where I have to keep moving around to avoid damage while using contagion and overheat on various enemies until I reach the van and jack in to find out that this entire operation is being run by NetWatch. They're apparently like the cyber police, they're hackers but also police. I don't know, it's confusing, but the important bit is I need to make my way to this NetWatch agent and stop him from doing whatever whatever it is he is doing. Unfortunately, between me and him, there's this absolute unit of a woman who just so happens to be the second boss of this run. On my first attempt, I get really confused as she regenerates health much faster than I can deal damage, and it becomes apparent I'm supposed to shoot at this weak spot on her back to stop her from regenerating, but I can't do that. Instead, I spend a long time trying to fight her, hoping there's some kind of damage threshold at which point she will hit the next phase of the fight, and this kind of happens. She's supposed to be a melee boss, but after I run away and come back, she has a machine gun and stops regenerating health. I nearly kill her, but end up screwing myself with overclock, allowing her to kill me. I then spend about an hour attempting to make any progress, and I find myself getting nowhere fast and dying a few more times. With that, I decide to try and just sneak past her, and this turns out to be the right call as I do just that and make my way to the NetWatch agent, who tells me that he's captured the Voodoo Boys leadership in the deep web, which I guess it means that they're stuck on the internet, like their mind? I don't know, it's very weird. Also, he says that the Voodoo Boys have implanted me with a virus, and he proves it to me. I agree to help him out, and in exchange, he removes the malware. I then return to Placide, who is upset that he lost contact with me during the mission, but I tell him I got his bosses freed, and he threatens to kill me, so I punch him and speak with Brigitte, the leader of the Voodoo Boys. She tells me she can help me get rid of the biochip if I help her contact Alt Cunningham. So we head over to one of her hideouts, and they shove me into an ice bath and hook me up to their systems. I then find myself in the deep web, which looks quite trippy, and she explains that we need to get a segment of Johnny's memories to bait out Alt to speak with us. So I go through another Johnny section where we start off at a concert as it's ending, and Johnny shoots someone before getting in a fight with our bandmate Carrie. He pushes him out of the way and enters the dressing room where I get to sit through an intense wrestling match between Johnny and Alt Cunningham. After that, they have a huge post-wrestle argument, and we skip forward to them talking in an alleyway, and out of nowhere some thugs attack us. I kill some of them, but then get stabbed by a guy with knife arms from behind, and then get dragged to the closest Ripper Dock by a stranger. After getting patched up, I learn the stranger is a member of the media, and he reveals that Arasaka took Alt, so naturally I head over to a bar to find Rogue so we can attack Arasaka and get Alt back. She is in a meeting with a guy who looks like Heisenberg from Resident Evil Village, and after I convince her to help me, we get attacked by more Arasaka soldiers. These sections are always really fun because of how overpowered Johnny is, and I just click on heads until nothing is left standing, and then head outside and continue to fight through Arasaka in a chase through Night City. Once free of my pursuers, I head over to Arasaka Tower, and we use a concert to distract the security of the building, and then sneak inside the tower and start blasting our way through to the server room where we think we're gonna find Alt. The combat isn't all that relevant, so I'll just skim over it here while letting you know it was both fun and easy. We find Alt in this weird chair with a man next to her, and she isn't moving. He says he put her on a project of a lifetime, and I blow his head off and try to get Alt to respond, but apparently she's dead. I then beat the media man half to death before the memory sequence ends. Brigitte then takes me to some place called the Black Wall, which is like some massive firewall that barely anyone can get past and no one has ever returned from. Naturally, since I'm the main character, I get to pass to the other side and call out for Alt. She tells me and Johnny that we can't be here before taking us back to Brigitte and the Voodoo Boy Netrunners, where she reveals that the NetWatch agent was using me as a mole to figure out what the Voodoo Boys were doing, and she says that NetWatch cannot touch her here before killing Brigitte and all of the Netrunners that helped me get to the Black Wall. She then takes me and Johnny to this special area and reveals that she is no longer the Alt that Johnny cares about, she is no longer the Alt that he knew, but an AI that uses her engram. She is some kind of amalgamation of other AIs and personalities, and all of this is leading to the fact that despite not caring about Johnny, she does agree to help save me if we can get her into Makoshi and let her destroy it while using its technology to save me. The conversation ends with her refusing to talk to Johnny anymore, and we go back to the real world where I climb out of the ice bath and get stuck into this section of combat where I have to kill all the Voodoo Boys investigating what just happened to their leader. The combat is actually quite intense as they are relatively aggressive, and I'm confined to these small rooms and corridors, but eventually I find myself face to face with Placide, who is another boss in the run. Luckily though, he doesn't really have any special abilities or weird mechanics, just a lot of health and he deals a lot of damage. I end up dying once to him before I manage to whittle down his health bar for long enough to down him. I take his key and exit exit the building only for the biochip to have a go at stopping my heart again. I take a seat and have a long talk with Johnny about trust while sharing a smoke as he explains what happens at Makoshi and reveals that he wants to save me because what he's doing to me is what Makoshi did to him. I then get a couple of phone calls, first from Takamura telling me to meet up with him for the parade, and after that I get another call from a woman named Songbird saying she can save my life. Apparently she needs me to go to Dogtown and I agree to do so. I then sell all of the loot from the past couple of missions and decide to do some side questing so I can get a high enough level to upgrade my cyberware again. I start off by heading over to the Delamain HQ where it appears that Delamain is glitching out a bit. He offers me a tour which I promptly take while following this adorable robot through the facility, and after a lot of explaining he asks me to go help him find a bunch of his rogue cars and bring them back to him. I agree to do so before heading off to collect these cars, and the missions aren't very difficult so I'll just gloss over them. The first car is overwhelmed by the city and I have to slowly drive it back to the Delamain HQ. The next one has daddy issues and is threatening to execute the self-delete.exe program, and in doing so it manages to throw me off this massive cliff, which was quite hilarious. I convince him to go address his daddy issues and go home before moving on to the next car, which happens to be the same one that totaled my car way back when I woke up after the entire, getting shot in the head section. For him, I just have to damage him enough to shut him down, so I just get into a ramming match with him until he does shut down. I tried hacking, but it was unavailable on him. I then realize that I'm nearby a gig and decide to go ahead and do that for some easy experience. It was more combat, but the enemies were complete pushovers and I don't really feel the need to talk about it. After that, I decide to go take on another side quest that I haven't gotten to yet, but unfortunately the quest doesn't show up in my quest log as there are a ton of quests in Cyberpunk that require a phone call or text in order to initiate them, and sometimes these just don't happen. Luckily, I've found a way to reliably trigger these phone calls and texts when I need them, and it basically just involves closing out of the game after making a save, and then standing completely still, not touching mouse or keyboard for 5 or more minutes in a public area of the game. After you wait for that amount of time and start moving, the game will do a check for any phone calls that you haven't received yet, and once it does this, you will almost immediately get one of the phone calls for one of the quests you have not started yet. This works pretty reliably, and after a couple of attempts, I get the call I was looking for from Claire, the bartender at the Afterlife. She asks me to become her driver for a series of races around Night City. That sounds like a lot of fun, so I tell her I'll be there, and she tells me to meet her at her garage when she's off work. So I head over to her garage and we get to talking as she works on her truck. I agree to be the driver in these races, which are basically death races from that movie Death Race, where the competitors can shoot and attack each other while driving, trying to reach the finish line first. I then head back home, sell some loot, and buy my favorite car for doing these races, the little mule, and before anyone comments saying I should use the Hoon or whatever car you think is best, I have tried most of them, and the mule is my favorite by far as it falls into that sweet spot of being fast yet controllable, and I just don't crash as much with it, so that's why I like it. Moving on, I head on to the first race and wait for Claire to show up. I decided to use my car, of course, and she gives me a shard with the rules for the race. We then get started with the racing, and I quickly find out that there is an unholy cheese that I can use to win all of these races. There's a quick hack called Emergency Stop, which forces cars to stop. And my competitors are all hackable, so I just go through the race and stop all my opponents one by one until I eventually finish the race. See, I thought that this was like something that would just stop the car temporarily. Like, makes sense. Like, you force the emergency brake and then after a while they can move again. No, they are stopped permanently, which means that every race is a no contest the second I'm behind the wheel. Moving on, I move on to the next race and do the exact same thing, but this time Claire says we're using her rig, which at this point makes no difference. I get into the truck and a guy named Luigi tries to get in my head, and I know who's getting hacked first. The race goes a lot like the last one, where I just force all the other racers to stop racing, and it's really funny to me as I pull across the finish line once again before heading off to the third race, which is in the city once more, but ends outside of the city. Just like the other two races, this one is incredibly one-sided, and I guess I'll explain why I wanted to do this quest line in particular, and that's because it unlocks these races as repeatable gigs, allowing me to farm eddies while also just having fun. Anyways, the race is eventually over, and Claire asks me to talk with her, so we head over to this overlook that that has a beautiful view, and she tells me that these races aren't about winning for her. She wants to kill a man named Samson in the final race. Apparently, he killed her husband during the finals last year, and I tell her I'll help her out, but I'm here to win, so he needs to die during the race according to the rules, and with that, I go ahead and make my way to the final race and find Claire screaming at Samson. We get into my car and start the race, and she just tells me to stay close to Samson. I quickly hack everyone but him, because for whatever reason he can't be hacked. I'm guessing it's because he's a quest item. His car is considered part of a quest. Anyways, I then spend a long and awkward time riding right next to Samson until he pulls off the race and I follow him. He then crashes and Claire holds him at gunpoint while Samson begs for his life. I tell Claire I want to hear him out, and after he explains everything to me, I ask her a question and she says, what does it matter? Anyways, in the end, I convince her to spare his life, and then we ride back to her garage and she gives me her truck for helping her. With that, the quest is complete, and I remember that I need to head over to Judy's apartment. Apparently, something happened and she needs me, so I head over and enter the apartment to find that, for monetization reasons, we're gonna say that Evelyn slipped and fell and has ceased to be. Anyways, I help her by moving Evelyn to the bed as she chews out the cops for saying they won't show up until tomorrow. We then head up to the roof where I'm trying to console her and I give her a smoke, and after a while she says she wants to be alone, so I leave the apartment in the most natural way, you know, by jumping off the roof. And with that, I decide to follow up on a text I got earlier from Panam mentioning something about testing out the Basilisk. That sounds like a nice change of pace after, that entire scene at Judy's got me, brought me to tears. That was really sad. So I head over to the Elder Caldo's camp to find a bunch of nomads around the Basilisk working on it. They are scanning for any bugs left by Militech, and after a short conversation, I hop inside the Basilisk with Pam, and we start going on a test drive. She leads me through a little obstacle course where I have to weave in between windmills before teaching me to fire my weapons at some scrapped cars. We then get a call from camp that they are under attack by a bunch of Raffins. We rush back, and it's once again a section where I'm forced to use a weapon, but I'm not complaining because using the Basilisk to create an incredibly aerodynamic mass grave was a ton of fun. With the Raffins relocated to the afterlife, I get out of the Basilisk to witness a wholesome moment between Saul and Panam as he promotes Panam to co-leader of the Elder Caldos. I then spend some time hanging out with Panam, who offers me a place in the Elder Caldos. I tell her I really wish I could join them, but I can't right now. I have things I need to do. She seemingly understands, but all of a sudden the biochip acts up again and I collapse to the floor. I wake up a while later in one of the tents with Panam, and she wants to know what's going on. I tell her about Johnny and the fact that the chip is killing me, and she asks how she and the Elder Caldos can help. I tell her I don't know if there's anything they really can do, but if I figure out what's needed, I'll let them know. With that, I leave the camp and continue to do random gigs, which are cakewalks at this point. I also find this really funny side quest when I go to the bar where we had Jackie's ofrenda. The bartender wants me to get proof that his wife is cheating. Johnny then starts narrating the entire quest like it's an old noir film, Annoying V. I fail this quest on accident because I fight some thugs in a convenience store, but I reload a save, and honestly, I'm just gonna play all of the Johnny bits right here for you because it is hilarious.
It was her, the lady in pink, breaker of hearts, framed by a halo of cigarette smoke. I followed her.
Dreaming of the day the narrator put a fucking plug in it.
Got too close. Almost scared the dame off. Better be careful.
I know.
The woman looked around. Something weighed on her. Maybe it was my gaze.
Keep this up, I'm gonna fucking puke. Narrate that.
Got too close. Again. Something just drew me to her, like one magnet to another.
Oh, stop.
The woman passes a bum, gives him a wide berth. Doesn't want her clothes dirty. Her conscience is already dirty enough.
Seriously, what did I ever do to you?
The dame disappeared into the guts of a building ready to collapse. The air hung heavy with smog and betrayal.
Maybe it's a good thing I'm dying.
Be careful! You're tearing my shirt!
Well.
Hey, you! What are you doing here?
Fuck, Cynthia. Told you to make sure nobody followed you.
Husband sent me. Suspected something.
What?
See, he was right.
Wait. No! It's not like that. I can explain.
Go on then, let's hear it.
Okay, for one thing, he's not my input. He's my ripper, a specialist in plastic surgery.
Specialist. In this dump?
Look, I know, I had this little accident a few years ago. The victim, well, the patient's family still can't let it go. That's why I'm forced to work here.
Hold on a sec. What about your kid?
Here's the thing, I didn't used to look like this. I had a total body sculpt, skin, hair, eyes, everything. Except, well, you can't fool your genes. That's why our son looks different than Pepe imagined. It's not because he's not the father, just that I don't look anything like the old me.
Well, plot's thicker than I imagined, for sure.
I'm glad you listened. Saw it from my point of view. I know I should have told Pepe about all this, but there was never a good time, and now that I'm expecting again, it wasn't planned. Please, tell him that...
Yes?
I don't know what to tell him myself, that I'm really sorry, that life's an absurdist drama, okay? Just go.
Hit the nail on the head with that last point.
In the end, I informed Pepe, the bartender, which I didn't even really mention his name before, but yeah, his name is Pepe, which is also kind of funny. Anyways, I inform him that his wife is not cheating on him and is rather addicted to cosmetic surgeries, and I also convince him to forgive her as she actually loves him and he loves her, which is rare in Night City. I then proceed to go back to collecting Delamain's rogue cars. I start with this car that needs me to kill the flamingo lawn ornaments because, you know, I guess they just wanted a really random car. The next one I need to deal with is really creepy. He's just sitting in a landfill and tells me I should stay out of his way after I hop in the backseat of his car. He has some grand plan or whatever for Delamain, and that is creepy. Anyways, I move on to the final Delamain, which is a reference to Portal. I follow the Portal car for a little while until it lures me into a trap and tries to get a bunch of scavs to kill me. I wipe out the scavs and convince the Portal car to return to Delamain, and with that, I've gotten all of the Delamain cars and I need to report back to Delamain HQ. I then get a call from Frank, the guy I spoke with at Arasaka in the beginning of the game, and apparently he is dead. He tells me he left some kind of dirt to bring down Abernathy, and that she's apparently cleaning house and killing or firing a ton of people in Arasaka. He wants me to avenge him by exposing her, so I head over to the place where he hid the dirt, and it's empty. He then comes out from behind me and holds me at gunpoint. He says he's gonna bring me into Arasaka, and I talk him out of doing this incredibly stupid plan, as he would most certainly lose. He then asks me what he should do. He's hit rock bottom, and I tell him I've been there and that he has a gun and his freedom, and that's all you need to make it in Night City. I leave and decide to do this quest called Send in the Clowns, where I got a message from a man looking for a driver and said he only hires the best. I go and pick him up off Jig Jig Street, but it's really dark, so I don't understand why V is freaking out when he gets in the car. But after I drive and go into first person and get a look at him, I realize he has a grenade embedded where his nose should be. This made me laugh so hard. Dude even made a joke about having to be careful not to pull the pin when he's picking his nose. It was so freaking funny. Anyways, this ridiculousness continues on and I'm loving it. I take him over to where he wants to go, and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of explosions and a gunfight happening. I proceed to panic and nearly die to all the people shooting me, but I evade death long enough to kill the hostiles and then talk to the clown who pays me. With that, I feel it's time to go upgrade my cybernetics once again. I do that, and here's what I'm currently running, and with that, I feel I should stop making Takamura wait so long, so I head over to the parade float quest, and the basic plan is that Takamura is gonna jump onto the float, but first, I need to take down 3 snipers and a netrunner that are protecting the parade, so I get right to it, but this mission is supposed to be a stealth mission. Unfortunately, the moment I start using hacks, they start tracking my location, so after a short period of time, I'm detected and everybody wants me dead. Anyways, I kill the first sniper really easily and then get into an elevator where we listen to Arasaka comms and hear Oda speaking with Adam Smasher about security. Johnny hears Adam's voice and all of a sudden becomes obsessed with killing him. I then make my way towards the second sniper, nearly dying to some drones along the way, before eventually fighting my way to the sniper and taking him down using my hacks. At this point, all notion of stealth is gone and I'm just slinging hacks out left and right at anyone I encounter until I reach the last sniper, who goes down just like the others before making my way towards the Netrunner. I find her at an abandoned building plugged into a big cable. I go to unplug her while dropping a one-liner, and out of nowhere, Oda attacks me in this awesome scene, kicking off a boss fight with him. This boss fight is absolutely brutal. I end up dying a few times, mostly due to his melee attacks, which are extremely lethal. He also has these sections where he cloaks himself and heals, and these are the biggest issue as my hacks aren't consistently stopping the healing. Sometimes I find him right when he's starting to heal and manage to stop him in seconds, and other times he gets half of his health bar back even though I'm hitting him with damaging quick hacks. Eventually though, I manage to bring him down through the clever tactic of running away and spamming overheat on him. I then spare him at Takamura's request before using the malware to shut down the defenses in Hanako's room, where I listen to a conversation she has with her brother before Takamura enters the room and tries to convince her to listen, but she's uncooperative, so Takamura just shoots her. At this point, all hell breaks loose. All of the security at the parade are currently closing in on my position, so I have to run out of this abandoned building while being rushed by a ton of Arasaka soldiers and drones. I manage to escape the assault and make my way over to an abandoned apartment building, because everything's abandoned around here, where Takamura said he has Hanako. He also stresses that I should knock 4 times on his room, so I head over and knock 4 times before he has me speak to Hanako. She isn't very receptive of what I have to say, and all of a sudden, we hear loud noises from the hallway. I go to investigate, and yet again, all hell breaks loose. An Arasaka hit team blows a hole in the wall and comes rushing in. The floor collapses and I fall down multiple stories before Johnny wakes me up and says we have to get out of here, insisting that we abandon Takamura. I don't really want to do that, so I start trying to make my way up the staircase towards him, but it becomes quickly apparent that I am outclassed by these soldiers. They do so much damage to me, and I am practically tickling them. I die once before getting stuck into a long section of attritional warfare. It's a slow and painful battle, but I clear rooms one by one, and wave after wave of Arasaka soldiers come after me, while I save Takamura and slowly get us out of the apartment building, where the screen flashes to black, and I find myself in a hotel room with a shotgun a few hours later. Johnny and I spend a while talking about how hotels like this are only for people hiding, and how screwed we are, when a car shows up and someone knocks at the door. I head over to the door with the shotgun drawn and ask who it is, and a voice of a woman replies. I eventually relent and let her in at gunpoint, and it turns out she's a doll, or a proxy, something. She's just a messenger is the point, and she sits down and starts smoking a cigarette. Then her demeanor suddenly shifts, and apparently Hanako is using her to speak to me, and we talk about everything I've done so far, and she offers to save me if I help her oust Yorinobu. She asks me to meet up with her at Club Ember in the city before disconnecting from the doll. I exit the hotel room, and the biochip starts trying to kill me once again. I try and talk with Johnny, but I immediately collapse, and Johnny says I'm not dying yet and that he's got me. The screen flickers to black, and I wake up in a different hotel holding some of the pills Misty gave me. Johnny and I talk about the beautiful view before I hobble around a building talking to him. I eventually reach this room where he tells me about a secret stash that he hid when he was alive. I open it and find some dog tags from one of his buddies in the Mexico War. He tells me that they are a promise that when the time comes, when it's either him or me who has to die, he'll die for me. I tell him I'd do the same, and we leave the hotel. I then decide to farm phone calls again to get a call from Judy. Luckily, I get it on my first attempt, and Judy wants me to help her take over Clouds, so we meet up outside the club so we can break in and speak with a woman named Mako. On my first attempt to meet up with Judy, I fail incredibly hard as I jump off this building to my death while trying to parkour like Michael Scott. Anyways, on my next attempt, I use the ladder like a normal person and meet up with Judy. She quickly disables the lock on the door, and we enter Mako's office. After a lot of conversation that goes nowhere, she tells us that Woodman, the man who sold and abused Evelyn, will be alone in the maintenance level. So Judy and I leave and talk about how she used to date Mako before making our way to Woodman. After a short conversation, Judy pulls out a gun, and I use my hacks to end him before we head into the elevator where Judy collapses to the ground while learning that revenge doesn't solve her grief. She says she needs some time to plan, so I decide to leave and do some racing so I can farm some eddies until I get another phone call from Judy. This time she wants me to meet up with her as well as some of the dolls from Clouds alongside Mako to go over the plan that we're gonna use to take over Clouds. I show up to find pizza, which I quickly eat before speaking with Judy and the dolls. dolls. I get informed that the dolls have had combat programs installed on their personality chips, and Tom here shows off by throwing knives at the wall with laser precision. But Mako wants an actual fight, so I agree to let Tom fight me, and he immediately takes me down when I throw a punch. With that, the dolls and Mako leave, agreeing to the plan. With them gone, I talk to Judy, and she thanks me for helping and offers to pay me, but I tell her no way before my biochip yet again tries to kill me, because it's like its favorite pastime at this point. I'm just always collapsing because of this damn chip in my head. I don't know why, but like it feels like I might have staggered it perfectly to where every quest ends with my chip trying to kill me, and it's wild. Anyways, Judy was concerned about it, and I explained what's going on, and she offers to let me crash at her place. So I sleep on the couch and wake up to breakfast on the counter before leaving the apartment. I need to wait for a phone call from Judy to progress this quest line, so in the meantime I decide to head over and do the chip in quest line, where Johnny asks me to let him take control by using some of the pills Misty gave me in order for him to speak with Rogue so we can figure out a way to deal with Atom Smasher, but instead, after taking the pills, he goes on a massive bender across Night City, getting hammered, and even gets me a tattoo. It was apparently just an absolutely wild night where he's getting into car crashes with hookers, and I can't lie, a lot of this was really funny. Anyways, I awake once again in a hotel room because it's Johnny's favorite place, and Rogue is there, and she tells me she's working on a way to get to Atom Smasher, but I need to wait for her to call later. Seems to be a lot of that going on. Anyways, I then argue with Johnny for a bit since I'm suffering from his hangover before leaving the building, and after a while I get that call from Rogue, but before I go on with that, I decide to progress the Judy storyline, so I wait for her phone call, and she wants me to meet her at the mega building where Clouds is located in order to overthrow the Tiger Claws. The plan is for the dolls to go into Clouds and kill all the guards and management, while Judy and I head up to the maintenance level and use an elevator there to head to the penthouse where the man who runs the club lives. This then turns into a short combat section where I take down 3 enemies in the maintenance level, and then ride up the elevator and fight through 3 more enemies guarding the room where the Tiger Claws are. Mako pulls them out of a Braindance and tries to make a shady play where she will take over Clouds, and I call her out on this. The Tiger Claw leaders attack me, and I use the Cyber Psychosis quick hack to make them fight each other, which works out wonderfully and is probably the fastest way for me to kill groups of enemies at this point. I only end up having to kill the last enemy by using Contagion, and then I talk with Mako, who is upset with me and decides to find out just how strong I am. She fights me, and I use the System Collapse quick hack to take her down in a non-lethal way before leaving the penthouse, where the game cuts to me hanging out with Judy celebrating our victory. She then gives me a kiss goodbye, completing the quest, and I then spend some time running around selling loot and getting eddies until I get a call from Judy telling me that I need to come meet her at a lake, which starts the Pyramid Song quest. So I head out to this small cottage by the lake. Wait, is it a cottage? Does a cottage have to be like a wood cabin? Somebody go tell me in the comments, like, would this qualify as a cottage? Is it just a place in the middle of nowhere that you live at? Oh man, why is this moving on. I wait here until she shows up, and she brought some diving gear. She wants us to go diving while trying out this new way to record brain dances with 2 people at once. Johnny is very against us diving, but I say screw him and go ahead and get with it. I get suited up and we enter the water, and after some calibration of the equipment, we drop down to the floor of the lake and find a town. Judy reveals she lived here as a kid, and we explore around, but weirdly I start hearing her memories. It's a really beautiful section where I scan various items and talk with Judy about them, even giving her a camera I found down here because she's really into vintage electronics. And after learning a little bit more about her childhood, we enter this church, and while inside, my biochip starts trying to kill me for the umpteenth time this day, it feels. Anyways, I predictably black out in probably the worst place you could possibly black out, you know, underwater. I wake up to Judy frantically yelling and freaking out, worrying that I had died, but somehow she pulled me out of the lake, and while we're talking, she hears Johnny. Which, you know, I haven't thought about at all. I kind of just got used to him just randomly talking while other people were talking, so it legitimately surprised me whenever she could hear him, and that was wild to me. Anyways, we head inside to get settled in and relax for the night, but Judy didn't disconnect us from the Braindance software, so we can still kind of hear each other's thoughts and memories. Anyways, I go outside to fix the power and I hear she's thinking about Evelyn. So I head inside and find her in the bathroom, seemingly upset. We talk for a while and she reveals that Clouds was wiped out by the Tiger Claws. I try and console her and then we proceed to wrestle the night away like it's WWE. Just Sheamus and John Cena going at each other. After that intense night, I wake up in the morning and get dressed before heading outside to find Judy sitting on the dock. I sit with her and sip from my coffee as she asks what last night exactly was. I say I hope it was the start of something amazing, and she reveals I ruined her plan to leave the city cause now she has to stay. This completes the quest and I leave the lake in my rear view while heading over to the afterlife to continue the Chippin' In questline. I speak with Rogue and find out that we're heading to some ship where we might find Adam Smasher. We hop in her car and chat for a while until we reach the shipyard, and then we wait until night to begin a stealth section. Unfortunately, my character sucks at stealth, so I just end up starting a big fight where I decide these Maelstrom boys aren't worth my time, and I literally just run past them and hack into this computer to get more intel before we get on the ship itself. I get in a fight with some of these melee enemies while listening to some recordings of Adam Smasher, and the combat isn't too difficult as I have a lot of experience with melee enemies ever since fighting Oda. It turns out that Rogue is actually really useful as she takes down this guy named Grayson who worked for Adam Smasher. This guy also happens to have Johnny's gun, and after a long conversation we realize he has nothing useful for us. He does though tell us where Johnny is buried before Johnny tells me to kill him using Johnny's gun, but I can't, so I just wait for Rogue to do it, which she promptly does. After that, Rogue storms off really upset, so I take Johnny to his grave and he gets depressed that there's no marker or any kind of remembrance of him. So I carve something into the metal to cheer him up, and then we have a long conversation about how I'm the closest person he's ever had in his life. He says he's happy he hasn't screwed our relationship up, but I tell him he has by betraying my trust when I let him take control. I tell him I'll give him a second chance, but as far as those go, this is the last one. And with that, he asks me to let him take Rogue out on a date. I then decide to go on this massive tangent of finding all of the tarot graffiti around the map. I don't know why, but I was just really curious if it gave anything cool, like a gun or some armor or something. Anyways, it was a fun time driving around the city and scanning all of these cool pieces of artwork, and once I've collected all of them, I get a text from some service that lets me order flowers for Judy before replying to a text of hers where she asks if she can come over to my house and hang out sometime. I say sure and meet her there, where we have a sweet little date. We talk a bunch, chill, dance, shower, and sleep before I leave. With that, all the Judy quests are complete, and I make my way to the afterlife where I call Rogue inviting her on a date for Johnny. I then pick her up in my car and we talk for a while, and she is surprised that Johnny is asking her on a date. She says she thinks I'm a good influence on him, and eventually we reach this drive-in movie theater where I spend a while getting it up and running before letting Johnny take control and have his date, which gets close to turning into yet more wrestling, but in the end Rogue storms off upset about something or other, and Johnny asks if I can take him to North Oak. I agree and take him there, where he proceeds to skip stones on this pond and asks me to let him go talk with his old bandmate Carrie. So I head over to Carrie's mansion and use my hacking skills to deconstruct a bunch of security robots before entering the mansion and exploring around. Johnny spends most of the time here insulting Carrie's place, but he does give a compliment to Carrie's car. He also tells me about his band's albums, which is quite cool, before he has me take a pill to let him take control. He proceeds to grab a guitar off the wall and starts playing one of the samurai songs. Carrie was showering and he comes out pointing a gun at me before realizing I'm Johnny. With that, they spend a long time talking and catching up before deciding to do one last gig for Samurai. I'm then tasked with finding a woman named Nancy who used to organize the band's gigs and is now a reporter for the news. I try calling her and only get her assistant, who tells me she's working on a story involving the Maelstrom Boys' new big band. So I head over to this club where she is and make my way up to find Maelstrom Boys at the entrance that want to try and kill me for what I did at All Foods. Before they get the chance, some woman shows up and tells me to follow her, and she takes me up to Brick, who is the leader of the Maelstrom Boys again after I killed Royce. After a short conversation, he lets me leave with Nancy, and I get in her car and convince her to organize a gig for Samurai. I then need to head over to the mansion of another band member named Denny, so I head over and find out that there is a huge argument going on between Denny and another band member named Henry, because apparently Henry drove a cement truck through a wall and dumped cement tournament in her pool. I get involved in the argument and have to decide which of these two band members will join us for the gig because they refuse to play together. I choose Dinny mainly because she seems way cooler, and also the whole cement truck thing seems like a dick move. With that, the gig is set up to go, and I head over to this bar called Red Dirt and speak with the band. I also get a cool surprise from Nancy, who managed to get a hold of Johnny's old original guitar before heading into the bathroom and taking a pill to let Johnny take control before participating in this awesome concert section. It was really fun, and I hope this bit isn't copyrighted, because if it is, then I'm just gonna have to mute it. But I really like how Cyberpunk has these moments where it's not just go kill bad guys. A ton of the quests are just fun, and I really enjoyed this one. The concert ends and Johnny is at the bar with Carrie, and he gives his guitar to Carrie before giving me control again by taking another pill. I talk with Carrie for a moment and he gives me his pistol while revealing to V that he almost shot her, which was a funny little moment. I then leave the bar and decide to make my way to Delamain HQ to turn in the questline for finding all the rogue cars, and he gives me a little reward for that. Now, I'm going to level with you. My original plan was to go do the Phantom Liberty DLC from here, but this video is already by far the longest video I've ever made, and cramming another 20 hours of gameplay into my format feels like a bit too much if I'm honest, so I promise on the next run, if you all like me covering Cyberpunk, I'll make sure to do Phantom Liberty. With that, it's time to take on the final quests of Cyberpunk 2077 as I make my way over to Club Embers to meet with Hanako. As I approach the building, I get a text from Judy, and apparently she is drunk texting me, which is kind of funny. Anyways, I reach the front door and get this message that says I'm going past a point of no return if I enter the elevator. Before entering the elevator and on the ride up, I start talking with Johnny about how we both don't like this situation. I then spend a long time talking to Hanako, and long story short, she wants me to testify against her brother before I start bleeding from my nose as the biochip is finally really close to killing me. I collapse in the elevator as I'm trying to leave, and I get in an argument with Johnny before blacking out again. I wake up on Victor's operating table, and it becomes apparent that Johnny brought me here as I was incredibly rude to him and Misty, and Victor just kind of doesn't want to see me anymore, so he gives me one more dose of both of the pills and a gun before telling me to leave. Oh, also, when Johnny spoke, V also spoke, so I must seem crazy because I'm having conversations with myself out loud now. Anyways, Misty takes me to this special spot where she and Jackie used to go to think. We have a nice conversation before she leaves me, and it's time for me to decide my ending path. Johnny wants me to let him and Rogue go to Makoshi, but I could also go with the Arasaka plan, or even use the Elder Caldos to get into Makoshi. Also, before you tell me, I do know that if I sit here for like 5 minutes, there's an option for us to do the suicide mission ending, which is where you just go by yourself, but I wanted to go with the Elder Caldos as they are my favorite group I've been around so far, so I didn't bother even waiting the 5 minutes to get that option. Anyways, I take a pill, causing Johnny to disappear before calling Panam and telling her the situation. She tells me to stay alive until she gets to Misty's place, and then I spend a while getting a reading from Misty until Panam shows up. The screen flickers to black, and I wake up in Panam's truck at the Elder Caldos camp, with Mitch right next to me, as apparently they assigned him to look after me after I blacked out. He tells me to go speak with Saul and Panam, which I promptly do, to find out their plan is to break into a nearby construction site for an underground rail line guarded by Militech. After we break in, we're going to use the tunneling machine to tunnel under Arasaka Tower so we can break in and make our way to the Makoshi access point. With that, I have a heart-to-heart with Saul, and then ask if they can get me into the deep web. I need to speak with Alt, so I head over to Dakota, the netrunner of the Nomads, and she gets me in an ice bath. Once I'm plugged into the system, I go and speak with Alt. She reveals that she does care about Johnny and was only helping because of him. I explain why he isn't here right now, and then she writes some code to a shard inside the Elder Caldos camp that will let her enter Makoshi. I wake up from the ice bath and get informed that I nearly died and that Alt destroyed their setup. I take the shard and then head over to this truck where Saul tells me to get up next to him. I do so and then am absolutely blindsided when he officially makes me a member of the Elder Caldos. This wholesome section involves me getting my own Elder Caldos jacket before celebrating with various people around the camp. I even end up doing this shooting competition with this old cowboy named Cassidy, where he bets his revolver that I can't hit 11 bottles in under a certain amount of time. I end up winning the competition, but I let him keep his revolver as I think it better serve him in the upcoming battle. Before anyone says that I just invalidated the run, no I didn't. I didn't deal any damage to enemies, stop being silly. Moving on, I continue to celebrate and talk with every member of the Elder Caldos until eventually making my way way to this cliffside to relax with Panam. I make an ass out of myself and then take a nap until morning, and when I wake up, it's time for us to go to war on Militech and Arasaka. We head down and speak with Saul and Mitch before using this drone to scout out the construction site, which honestly wasn't that useful and was just kind of time consuming. After that, I hop into the Basilisk with Pam and start following the raiding party as we make our way to the construction site. On the way there, we start getting barraged with missiles after breaching the perimeter, and I have to weave through them until we pass through this big wall, and the Basilisk suddenly breaks down. The game then forces me out of the cockpit, and I have to use this sniper rifle to down a ton of drones. I did try to hack, but it wouldn't even pull up the quick hack menu, so in this case, I get to just enjoy clicking on drones one after the other, which was kind of fun. Maybe my next run on this game will be as a sniper. Would you all want to see that? Anyways, Bobby was at the comms tower, and one of the drones decided to do their best Imperial Japanese Air Force impression, killing him. I then go on a rampage with the Basilisk to avenge him by taking out all of the security forces and ramming my way through this gate before the Basilisk breaks down once more. I then start this section where I have to fight through a ton of Militech soldiers to get the Nomads into the control room. Once they're in the control room, I then need to defend them while they hack into the tunneling machine. The fight with the small Militech army was quite fun. I find my favorite hacks for dealing with these large groups are Contagion, which is kind of obvious, and also Cyberpsychosis. The combination is quite nasty as it damages all of the enemies at once and then pits them against each other. Overall, it's incredibly effective, and I deal with wave after wave of soldiers until Panam fixes the Basilisk once more, and we finish off all of the incoming Militech personnel by heading out and shooting at them with the Basilisk, which was incredibly fun. We then ride into the tunnel while I speak with Panam until we reach the drill. We get out, and apparently Mitch wants to go back with the Basilisk by himself to save the other Nomads. Panam is really against this, as you can't pilot the tank alone without overloading your nervous system, but in the end he's too stubborn and takes the tank, while me, Panam, and Saul break into Arasaka Tower by using the drill. There's this moment where the drill tears itself apart and the game tries to convince you that Panam is dead, but luckily we're all fine and we enter the tower to start sneaking around until I come to this desk with two Arasaka employees. I use my hacks to take them down, but this reveals our location, so we have to start fighting our way through a ton of Arasaka security. This was very tense, and I almost die a couple of times due to my overuse of the overclock feature and enemies surprising me from the flank. But I press through until we reach this access port, where I insert the shard that Alt gave me, and all of a sudden chaos breaks out as she takes over all of the drones and robots in the building and starts using them to slaughter all of the Arasaka personnel while escorting me to the Makoshi access point. Right when we're about to enter the final room, I lean down to open this door and Saul helps me, only for Adam Smasher to smash his way in rather violently. Saul and I are knocked to the ground and he scrambles to get his gun and shoot Smasher, but Smasher just shrugs off his bullet and violently kills Saul. With that, the final boss fight of the game kicks off, and this fight was a blood-pumping and intense bit of combat. I end up having to use pretty much every strategy I've developed throughout this run in this one fight, which I think really marks a good boss. Anyways, I start off by using Overclock to cast my highest base damage hacks on Smasher before I start the long and slow process of running away while regenerating RAM. I also make sure to only cast hacks when Smasher is point blank, as I have a perk that lowers the cost of hacks the closer I am to an enemy. Throughout the fight, Adam Smasher starts losing limbs and various cybernetics, and about halfway through, he starts spawning these Arasaka soldiers on raised platforms. I have to use Contagion and Cyberpsychosis to quickly clear out these Arasaka soldiers, and after that I go back to my original strategy of running away to regenerate RAM, and then using Overclock as well as getting to point blank range with Adam to cast Synapse Burnout and Overheat on him, and I continue this cycle multiple times before eventually I incapacitate him. I tell him that he lost, that Johnny won, that in the end Johnny triumphs because he still lives on through me, and he won't be alive for very much longer. He's confused, and with that the conversation ends, and I try to use a hack to kill him, but I just can't hack him, so I decide to punch him in the face till he dies. Now I'll accept that maybe I just invalidated the run if you want me to. I'll leave it up to you all. It was just too satisfying not to do this for me, so I don't care if it invalidates the run really. With Smasher dead, I enter the Makoshi access point and collapse multiple times before finally reaching it and linking in before falling into this massive ice bath. The screen goes black and I find myself in an elevator that opens up to the roof from earlier, and I see the cat once more. I continue up to the rooftop and pick up my bullet necklace necklace from the ledge before the screen fades to black once more and Alt starts reading poetry as I walk towards this massive pyramid. After a long walk, I meet up with Johnny and he is happy that I managed to do it, and we joke around a bit as I sit down with him at a diner. We talk about Makoshi and he reveals that I'm an engram and Alt used Soul Killer on me the second I jacked in. Then after a long conversation, it's revealed that I have a choice. The biochip has altered my body's DNA to the point that if I go back to it, I'm going to die within about 6 months. Rather conveniently, if Johnny takes my body, he will be able to live a normal and healthy long life. This honestly got to me. I knew going into this that there probably wouldn't be a happy ending, but it is very bittersweet to go through all of this and get to the point to find out that there is no way for V to live, at least in their own body. Johnny insists that I take the body, that I live those 6 months to the fullest, and that he will join Alt as an engram beyond the black wall. So I'm left with a choice: take my body and die in a short time, or become an engram forever on the deep web. In the end, I decide to go with what Johnny wants. I take my body, and I leave. There's then this section where I take one last look at Night City before Panam drives me over to meet with the other nomads. Apparently, we're all gonna leave Night City, heading towards Arizona. I get this pleasant surprise when Judy shows up, and she's coming with us. I have a sweet moment with her before getting in the Basilisk and using it to break past the security border of Night City, and we start heading across this lake where I put the Basilisk on autopilot. I then take a seat on the front of the tank and let go of my bullet necklace, leaving it behind in this kind of metaphorical scene before relaxing with Panam as the screen fades to black and the credits roll with various people from Night City leaving me voicemails. And with that, I answer the question, can I beat Cyberpunk 2077 with only quick hacks? I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards no personally, but it's up to you all to decide in my opinion. I did a lot of shooting guns and I even punched a guy. Almost all of it was forced upon me and it wasn't an active choice I made, and the one time I would say that I just blatantly broke the rules didn't really have impact on the game, but I can't rightfully say that I did or didn't complete the run legitimately, so that's it. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a challenge suggestion below. I'd like to thank my channel members and patrons as their support has been tremendous. If you liked this run, you'll probably like my Fallout New Vegas run where I try and beat the game using only VATS. And with that, you all are beautiful, and this is Willow, signing off.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.